Hey everybody, welcome back. So this video is going to address a bunch of questions I get asked a lot by people who are setting up giant scale electric model airplanes. And I'm going to try to cover an awful lot here, and this video may go 30 minutes, which I hate them going past 10. But there's just a lot of information, and I'm not talking about the internal resistance of a battery. I've already done that. I'm not talking about how you charge them or how you parallel charge them. I'm talking about the way you might set up how many cells you need, how many parallel batteries you may need, things to basically fly when you're going over 150 amps on a motor, okay, or over 5,000 watts or closer to 6,000. So if you don't know me, I am a complete nerd when it comes to electric model airplanes and building giant scale electric airplanes, and 188-inch wingspan MSL2. This is my 197-inch wingspan MSL1. So both of these planes, I'm going to talk about the setup of the battery, the speed controller, and the motor. And then I'm going to talk about something people forget, and that's the propeller. Okay? Before I jump too far into this, I want to talk about my awesome sponsor, RTL Fasteners. If you go to rtlfasteners.com, you're going to find all your blind nuts, bolts, nuts, metric standard, servo screws, everything you need for the hobby. If you use a code DA30 and you buy more than $50 worth of product, you'll get 30% off that order by using that code DA30. So I'm going to go back to the very basics of batteries for a minute. Now, when I was in high school, believe it or not, back in the 80s, or late 70s, early 80s, we had electronic class. And in that, they taught us some very basic things about electricity. But one thing that they taught us was the difference between a series circuit and a parallel circuit. And that is really important in our discussion today, that you understand the difference between the two. This is in series. This is where the voltage increases, but your capacity does not. So if these were all 1-volt batteries, you would have 3 volts at the end of this circuit. This is a parallel circuit. You would still have 1 volt being read on the leads, but the capacity is tripled. Okay? When you look at a single cell, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff I can show you here, but this is, hang on a minute. This is a single cell from a Lipo, and this is what it's going to look like in my demonstration. So this is a 3.7 volt, 5,000 milliamp cell. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into when this is fully charged, it's 4.2 volts. Okay. But that's not the way they put the writing on your battery. On your battery, it's going to take the number of cells times 3.7 is that voltage. So this is what I call 1S, which means it's just one cell in the series that's going back to your electronic speed controller. Okay? Now this is, believe it or not, still considered 1S because it will measure 3 volts. But notice there's 2 cells there in parallel. So you just went from a 5,000 milliamp pack to 10,000 total capacity. Now, I've had people say to me, well, Damon, I don't understand why they would want to do that. I'm going to show you now. This battery pack is one of my 13-year-old Thunder Powers. I had 370 some flights on this. And if you look down here, which you can't read, it says, and I'll read it to you, that this is a where does it say it? Oh, right there. It says 5-cell, 18.5 volt, 5S, 6,600 milliamp. But when you open up the pack, there's 10 cells in this. That means each 2 cells is 3,300 milliamps in parallel. So these 3 make up a 3.7 volt pack at 6,600 milliamps. The next 2, all the way down, 10 cells in 5 parallel circuits. Okay? So I'm not trying, I know this is going to get confusing later on, but I've had people say to me, Dag, why do you tell me that there's 5 cells in my 5S pack, but I can sit here and count there's 10 cells in there. It's because 2 of them are in parallel, another 2 are in parallel, another 2 are in parallel. That's how we get our high milliamp capacity packs. Okay, so this little guy right here, griller guy, is only 3,300 milliamps, but 2 of them put together is 6,600 milliamps. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. So when we go to this, these are now in series. This is 2S, so 2 3.7s is 7.4. Okay, this means your voltage increases, but your milliampere capacity stays the same. This is a 3S 5000. Okay, we're adding voltage as we add cells. And if you'll notice at the top of these packs, the way they're welded together, it's a series circuit. Now, I'm not showing all your balance leads. Right now, I'm just showing the raw packs. This is a 4S pack. Going to be 4 cells in series, giving you 14.8 volts. It's called 4S. I had somebody say, well, no, it should be 4C because there's 4 cells. The C rating is completely different, and I've done a video on that. These are S, series. How many cells are in series? And if 2 packs are welded together as a parallel, that's only seen as 1 cell. Okay, even though there's 2 cells in there, okay? I know that's confusing. This is a 5S, and this is a 6S pack. This is what a 6S pack would look like with the battery lead wired to it. And I want you to think a minute, though. I just want to plant a seed. When you think about the battery leads, how many amps are those battery leads really rated for? What is your battery's total discharge rated for? As far as how many amps can you pull in that battery without hurting it? I want you to remember that for later. I had somebody send this to me and say, well, this is really 12S. I said, not the way it's drawn, it's not. Now, they drew me a sketch, and I, of course, went into my Fusion 360 and drew this example. But this is actually 2 separate 6S packs. They're not connected in any way to make them parallel or series in this diagram. To get a 12S system, okay, you're going to take the 2 6S packs and put them in series. Now, if you need 10S, 11S, 9S, 7S, you can mix and match your batteries to make it. You could have a 4 and a 3 to make your 7. Okay, and the milliamps need to be almost perfect. The problem is if they're off a little bit, you might end up running one battery down below 3.7 volts before you run the other ones. Well, that's not necessarily right. Yeah, it is. You'll end up, I don't know. I did testing on this. I just don't remember my testing. You want the milliamps to be, because I'm thinking as the milliamps comes down, that's going to be your voltage coming down. It's going to try to stay, ignore what I'm talking about right now. I should just edit this out, but I'm not. But this is a 6S, 2 6S packs that make up a 12S. So you're basically getting your 44.4 volts by going to 12S. Okay, if you got to go to 14S, you're going to mix and match your cells, okay? This is going 6S in parallel. So it's called 6S2P. The P means parallel. So now we got 6 cells and 6 cells in parallel, which is 22.2 volts, 22.2 volts in parallel. But your milliamps just went from 5,000 to 10,000. This is 4 6S packs, 2 of them put in series, another 2 put in series, so it's called 12S2P. Okay, so let's go back for a minute. This is 6S2P because each one has 6 cells. This is called 12S2P because you have a 6-pack and a 6-pack in series, a 6-pack and a 6-pack in series, and then in parallel. Voltage increase and capacity increases in this type of setup. Now, I want to go back again for a minute and talk about where we put them in parallel. Okay, this is actually a 2S 7.4 volt, and I've seen people use these for receivers. I hate using Lipos as receiver batteries when they're close to the voltage that you actually need. I like to use, if I use a Lipo as a flight pack, I like to have a 4 or a 6 cell in there using a voltage regulator to drop it down to my 7.4 or 6.6, wherever I'm wanting, because it's going to be almost impossible to run a 4 or a 6 cell down. this 2S 7.4 could be run down. And if you get your cells below 3.7, 3.6, 3.5, you'll start hurting the lipo. Not to mention, you might end up getting brownouts because that battery's not going to pull any load when your servos are throwing a load on the system. But this is called a 2S 10,000 pack, even though there's 4 cells in there. 2 parallel in series. Okay, I'm going to show you another diagram. I'm trying to get people to understand, because I've literally got over 20 private messages and emails over the last probably 15, 16 months where people don't understand what the 4S means or what the P means. The S is number of circuits in series. Okay, this is a 4S 4P setup. A friend of mine's got a reconnaissance plane that he wanted to loiter for an hour and a half. It was a 4S system, so he put 3 other 4 cells on it in parallel, which gave him 20,000 milliamps. Okay, and that's how you increase flight time. Now, this is where I like to do this sometimes on the planes I've built. I love having 5 cells, 6 cells, and 4 cell batteries laying around, because I can mix and match to make 12S, 10S, or 8S. And that's what most of my testing and flying have been on. So in this instant, you have a 4S and 4S, which is 8 in series. You have a 4S and 4S, 8 in series. So this is 8S, 2 parallel. Okay. This is where I took a whole bunch of 6 cells and put them all in parallel. 4S, 4P. Okay. And one last time, I'm going to show you a 12S 2P system just to make sure it is as clear as mud. Okay. 6S and 6S equals 12S in series. 6S and 6S equals 12S in series. Then you're going to put these in parallel. This is a 10S 2P system. Okay. Now, this is what my 1S 5000 looks like. This is what a 2S 10,000 looks like. You can see that the 2 tabs are welded together on the first 2 cells. Then the top of them are welded together to the other cells, put in series, and the other 2 are in parallel. This is taking 5,000 cell packs and making this a 10,000 cell battery. Now I want to talk to you about the load and sharing the load, or spreading the load, as I like to put it. And I've had more people, you know, look folks, I've done this for 12 years. I have built all kinds of hang on a minute. I have built all kinds of experimental packs where I write, don't fly on them, don't fly me, test, never fly. I have done so much where I have bursted cells, okay, blowing them up. What's that say on it? Oh, yeah. I name all the cells I test, and I'm not going to show you all the names because they're kind of stupid. But this is where I've blown up cells. I'm not saying I know everything there is to know about lipos, because without a doubt I don't. But I've had so many people come out, and I'll spend so much time trying to explain it to them, and then they basically say I'm wrong. Well, Damon, that's not what I read on RC groups. Or, Dag, this isn't what I saw on YouTube. Great, believe what you want there. When you keep blowing up your speed controllers and you keep burning up your motors and you're asking me why, you might want to just listen. Okay, I can help teach you, but I can't learn it for you. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is what I call spreading the load. And if you look at really big capacity speed controllers, this is my Spin 300. Sorry, this is my Spin 300 Jetty. But you notice there's 2 black input wires and 2 red input wires. So why is that? I'm going to go back and show you now. So most of the time, these batteries are designed to be discharged at like 120 amps, 150 amps. I've got a couple that you can discharge at 208 amps continuous. But those are kick-ass batteries, and they normally will have some pretty big wire on them, okay? But when you are doing a 12S system, some people say, well, Damon, why don't I just buy those big milliamp packs? I can buy a 12S, like 12,000 milliamp pack. This is a reason I don't like to do big systems only in series, because that means your entire system is seeing the full 200 amps or 300 amps, like this, if I maxed it out. You're running that through your batteries, okay? On my MSL 1 and 2, I do 10S2P, and I'll explain in a minute why it's a 10S system. But keep in mind, each of these batteries right here are seeing the full 200 amps of load. When you put it in parallel, each battery in series is seeing 100 amps. So I've spread my load, I've shared my load. You still have 200 amps at the speed controller. You still need to make sure your wire harness is beefed up big enough to handle 200 amps at this speed controller. But if you have some battery leads, and not all batteries are created equal, that have this little bitty wire on it, okay? You got this little bitty wire on it. Are you going to feel really good about, say, hammering 200 amps through this wire all the time? It might work, and I've done testing where it gets hot and it doesn't melt. But what are you doing to your connector? But what are you doing to your battery and the chemistry of your battery? If you land and your battery is really, really hot to touch, it will probably do that, but it might only do that 100 times. Keep in mind, most of my batteries, I get over 350 flights on, between 325 and 375. I don't want to exaggerate. So one reason I love to always do a parallel system is my batteries, when I land, are lukewarm. They're never hot. They're never hot. So what happens when you get batteries hot and you make the internal resistance go up? And I don't want to cover too much on that because I've already done a video on internal resistance, but you end up getting batteries that can look like this. Okay, the battery on the right had a higher internal resistance, and I kept hammering it with 150 amp load, and it started swelling up. Now this is one of 5 batteries that were in a 5S pack. All 5 swelled up like that. It ripped the outside covering. Okay, the one on the left is a battery that never exceeded half of its rated full load and had 350 flights on it, or 354 or something like that. I should write it down on the cell. I don't remember. Real quickly, most speed controllers and testers can show you the internal resistance if you know what buttons to press. I've done a whole video on it. Go find it on my YouTube. There's over 200 and some videos I've made. But internal resistance means how fast the power can be sucked out of your battery. The higher the resistance is, the harder it is for the current to come out, and you have increasing heat in that battery. Some of these little nifty controllers will also tell you what your internal resistance is. But to me, what's more critical is when I land, excuse me, is how hot is my battery and what is my landing voltage. My landing voltage is normally always 3.8 or 3.79, maybe 3.75. Only once or twice have I had like a 3.5. Now look, I'm talking about my giant airplanes only here. I'm not talking about my little park flyers. I've landed my park flyer where I had 2.9 volts per cell, and I was able to save the battery. For some reason, we'll just fly the crap out of those park flyers and stuff, and we'll run them until the motor sags are, you know, the low voltage cutoff shuts off. But on my big airplanes, where I've got a lot of investment, sometimes $3,000 in my motor, speed controller, and batteries, I want that to last me. Well, keep in mind, my Hacker A100 and my Castle 160 are now been flying 12 years in my setups. I started in 2010 flying those, and the planes are still flying awesome. Okay, so I've taken care of my motors, but one thing about motors is, the more you heat up that motor, the more the magnets will slowly start to go bad. So my Hacker A100 has almost 2,000, well, hang on a minute, 1350, no, about 1,560 flights on it. And still runs like it's brand new. So it's something to consider. Also, I know there's a lot of videos and people out there saying parallel charging is not good or it doesn't work. I've done it 12 years. Make sure you got a battery and a setup that will do it right. I normally fly Thunder Power or Potenza, the Potenza batteries that Flex Innovation has. Those are my 2 favorite go-to batteries. And actually lately, sorry everybody, my allergies have been killing me. But if you've been watching my videos, you know I'm having a horrible allergy season. But my Potenza batteries that I buy from Flex are my go-to batteries right now. I absolutely love them. And I've got 2.5 years on them, and the internal resistance hasn't hardly changed at all on them. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is what I call the 4. Okay? And you've got a batteries, speed controller, motor, but then your propeller. And this is where I just kind of go crazy trying to help people understand how an RC electric airplane setup works. And this is only from my experiences. If you've followed me for any time at all, you know I only try to share my experiences. I'm not guessing why somebody's plane did that. I'm not saying, oh, their radio went bad, when in fact they pile drived it to China because they got too slow from base to final. I'm not out there doing those kind of videos. These are only my real life experiences in RC and aviation, okay? But if you flew back in the glow years, where we flew a lot of glow powered airplanes, and then we got nitro, then we got gas, and we had tune pipes and everything. One of the things we always tweaked was the size of the propeller and the pitch to get the plane to perform perfect. For some reason on electrics, people either want to go super high pitch, which it makes sense, and I'll explain to you in a minute why, or they want to go super low pitch, like they do a gas or glow engine, okay? Forget you want to go fast or anything. You just want the airplane to fly scale. Let's just set that down as a premise for a minute, okay? So imagine you have an airplane like my MSL 1 or 2 that flies beautifully at 48, maybe 50 mile an hour. That's where it's the happiest. You can just fly it around. You can do big lazy turns. You know, if I want to do a hammerhead, I'll put the nose, go up to about 75 mile an hour, believe it or not. And I know all this because of my GPS and telemetry that's on the airplane. And then I'll pull it up, do my hammerhead. The plane's just happy. But if you put a really low pitch propeller on the airplane and you don't know what your prop speed is, or you put a really high pitch prop on your airplane and you don't know what your prop pitch speed is, you're guessing. So if you don't know what prop pitch speed is the pitch of your prop means if it's like an 8, if it turns 1 revolution, it's moved like 8 inches through the air, okay? And there's all calculators on the internet. You can go find prop speed calculators. So you can put the pitch of the prop and the RPM, and it will give you prop pitch speed. Everybody, well, most people know that if it says a prop pitch speed of 100 mile an hour, the most your plane's going to go is about 90 or 92, depending on how clean the airframe is, because we can never get to a true 1-to-1. There's always going to be drag or inefficiency in the propeller a little bit, okay? So most of my planes, if it says 85 mile an hour prop pitch speed, I'm like, that's plenty fast enough for my MSL 1 and 2, okay? If it's a park flyer, you'd be amazed when you put a GPS in there and find out how slow your park flyer is really slow, how slow they really fly. Okay, now if you're trying to go really fast, ignore what I'm talking about, because you probably already know how to figure all this out. But let's say you, and I'm going to use an example, but I'm not going to use the name. The guy's really hilarious, and he wouldn't mind me using his example as long as I don't use his name. So let's imagine that you built a really nice scale airplane. And that scale airplane had a 130-inch wing. And it was a World War II type fighter. And he said, I don't care how fast it goes, I just want it to fly. I said, okay. So he flew it, and he goes, you know, Damon, I'm just running this thing at full throttle, and I'm just not getting anywhere fast. So I said, okay. And he goes, but then I changed props, and my batteries were almost on fire. They were so hot when I landed. I said, okay. So I said, well, first of all, you know, tell me how many kV your motor is. He told me how many kV. And because he was around 150 kV is which I've got on my MSL2. And I said, well, I'm running a 32/8 pitch prop. And he goes, 8? And I go, yeah. And he goes, why an 8? And I said, because that gets me exactly to 160 amps, which my speed controller is rated for when I'm at full throttle at takeoff. And he goes, tell me this again. And I said, well, if I have 12S with that 8-pitch prop, I'm over amping my speed controller, so I went to 10S. But at 10S, I was still at 168 amps. So I went from my 12-pitch, hang on, let me make sure I said that right. I have 10S 2P, but 10S is how many in series. I get 168 amps at a 12-pitch prop. 10-pitch prop, I'm sorry. When I went to an 8-pitch prop, I was exactly 160 amps on my speed controller on takeoff. 12S, I was like at 178. So that's the reason I run 12S on my giant scale airplanes, because I don't want to blow up my speed controller. But I use the pitch to fine-tune the maximum, like 6,000 watts, whatever it is I'm getting out of my system. But I looked at my pitch speed. At an 8 pitch, I have a prop pitch speed of 81 miles an hour. And that's plenty fast enough for my plane to fly at 50 mile an hour at cruise. Now, some of us back in the day wanted to fly the highest pitch propeller we could put on an electric because the torque is linear. And by having a linear, that means your horsepower is linear. On a gas engine or a glow, you aren't reaching all your RPM until you're at the very kind of top 10% of that RPM range. On electric, it's pretty much linear across the entire throttle band. But when we would put really high pitch prop on electric airplanes in the beginning, and I'm talking 10, 20 years ago, it's because the slower propeller turns, the more efficient it is. So we could put big diameter, high pitch prop on our electrics, and I'm talking about things that are basically 40 size or 30 size model airplanes, and we'd use our either Makita electric drills or our, it wasn't Makita, I'm trying to remember that first electric, DeWalt. I think it was DeWalt. We used to buy electric drills, cordless drills, and we would actually use the NiCad packs out of RC cars, and that was some of the first electric airplanes. But we want to put as high a pitch as possible because the slower the propeller turns, the more efficient it is. Well, when you get to 32-inch prop on a 150 kV motor, and you know you got a prop pitch speed of 80 miles an hour, you can know it's going to fly the plane. So I know I made this probably really confusing. I don't mean to, because I see it all up here. But the thing is if you're scratch building or designing your own giant scale electric airplanes, keep in mind there's 4 very important things. The number of cells, the size of your ESC, the kV of your motor, and what's the pitch of your prop. Because if you're like me, most of my planes fly between 35 and 50 miles an hour, cruising around, just having fun. A prop pitch speed of 75 to 80 mile an hour is going to fly that plane fine. Now, if you want to go really fast, your prop pitch speed is going to have to be up there. If you want to have a 150 mile an hour airplane, you're going to have a prop pitch speed of about 180 mile an hour, which means you are turning a high pitch prop very, very many RPMs. And you're going to have a very high kV motor with fewer magnets than we use on our lower kV motors. So I hope this made sense, everybody. I'm just trying to get everybody to understand what the S means and the P means, and how you size it for your giant scale electric model airplanes, because I have really had incredible success. But you've got to keep in mind, I mean, all of the batteries. I mean, these batteries were all bad and they didn't have any life left in them. And I just started testing the crap out of them. Okay, I shouldn't say all the batteries. I did take 2 new packs one time to test how fast you can destroy the internal resistance on a battery. And I've done videos on this, but if you're too lazy to go find them, which is fine with me, the best 2 ways to destroy a Lipo is overheat it. Just hammer the crap out of it all the time, or leave it charged. There was, and I don't, look everybody, try to be positive, and I very rarely will call anybody a name unless they're my friend and I've said it to their face. But when I was first in electrics, I was really misled. I was told by a person, oh, you can leave your batteries charged all the time. For RC, it's not that important. So I had some batteries not last very long. So I decided to buy 2 packs. 1 pack, I just ran it to I mean, maximum amps. If you ever saw my video where I built the thing with the 50 light bulbs to just hammer my Lipo packs, you know how I learned to destroy Lipos, okay? And I don't like to destroy them. I normally take my old ones that have horrible internal resistance and use those to test the destruction. But I did buy two brand new packs. The other pack I left fully charged for an entire year. And my internal resistance at the end of 2 years was in the 50s. So, and I didn't fly the battery hard at all. So by leaving it fully charged for an entire year, by the end of the next year, the batteries were worthless. Totally worthless. And most of the time my battery, well, I shouldn't say years, because most of my batteries last me 3 or 4 years, okay? I should say number of flights. I normally get 350 flights out of a set of Lipos. I got something like 116 flights on the pack I left charged all the time, and the internal resistance was in the 50s. So please store your batteries somewhere between 3.8 and 3.85, and they're going to last a lot longer, okay? So I'm going to shut this video down, everybody. I hope you understand my intent in this video. I know it went way too long, but I'm just trying to get people to understand on giant electric models, there's so many things to think about. The batteries, the speed controller, the motor, and the propeller. The propeller is really important, okay? So look, rock on, everybody. Have a great day. And you know I always like to end these videos with saying take a kid flying, sticking them in front of a computer and teaching them how to massacre and mutilate people isn't very scientific. And in aviation, you learn how to get along with people. You learn how to get along with trolls. You learn physics, science, aerodynamics, and you learn a skill that, you know, can take you into full scale one day. Because, you know, I started in model aviation, become a full scale pilot, love it. Too expensive to fly now. That's the reason I'm building my ultralight. If you're following my channel, you'll know I've got that there. But make sure you embrace kids. Keep the kids in. If you're one of those old farts that, and I get you all the time on my channel coming in here going, well, there's only one thing I liked about this video, and I've never done what you've done, but I disagree with everything you're saying. Hey, rock on, dude. I can take that every day. But if you're going to say this to like a 18-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old, do us all a favor. Just go destroy somebody's golf game, okay? Go destroy somebody's tennis match. Go to the mall and just walk around aimlessly. Don't distract the little kids that we want in this hobby to keep it going for the next 50 years. You know, I don't know how many people in the last couple of weeks have emailed me telling me about all the problems they're having with clubs and their younger people. So you old farts are really ruining this hobby. You really are. So, and I'm not old fart. I might be 59, but internally I'm about 12 years old. So rock on, everybody. I'll see you next time. Be safe and take a kid flying, please. Okay? Rock on.